soul, Coleridge had called this ideally united trio of himself and his friends, and as three people with one soul, they walked on seaward Quantock's Heath hills, and had every thought in common. "We are off for a long walk this lovely noon," explained Dorothy, "and taking our lunch with us. Will you come, Mr. Coleridge?" A very hasty wash and brush, and a hurried goodbye to Sarah, and the poet had forsaken a distasteful employment for a singularly congenial one. Over the hills and far away, he could postpone for the nonce every workaday question which troubled him, and, deep in the abstrusest consideration of poetry, or speculation of philosophy, could steep himself in the calm which was his ultimate desire. He had a host of projects to discuss. He had planned, in collaboration with Wordsworth, a great book of man and nature and society, to be symbolized by a brook in its course from upland source to sea, much on the lines of his own strophe from the German. "Unperishing youth, thou leapest from forth the cell of thy hidden nativity. Never mortal saw the cradle of the strong one. Never mortal heard the gathering of his voices. The deep murmured charm of the son of the rock, that is lisped evermore at his slumberless fountain. There's a cloud at the portal, a spray-woven veil at the shrine of his ceaseless renewing. It embosoms the roses of dawn. It entangles the shafts of the noon. And into the bed of its stillness the moonshine sinks down as in slumber. That the son of the rock, that the nursling of heaven, may be born in a holy twilight." He had begun The Ancient Mariner upon a previous walking tour, also as a joint composition with the other poet, but had taken it into his own hands and finally completed it this spring. He had an immense proposal for an epic, which should take 10 years for collecting material, 5 for writing and 5 for revising. Nobody could accuse Coleridge of undue haste. He had undertaken a translation of Wieland's Oberon, which was likely to be more troublesome than remunerative. But most of all he desired to ascertain his friend's criticism on his newest fragment, Christabel. The bulk of his achievements were but fragmentary at the best. "Geraldine in the forest. Geraldine in the forest. There she sees a damsel bright, dressed in a silken robe of white, that shadowy in the moonlight shone. The neck that made that white robe wan. Her stately neck, and arms were bare, and wildly glittered here and there the gems entangled in her hair. Christabel." Coleridge's mind was that extremely rara avis in terra, which combines the artistic with the philosophic temperament, two inherently opposed qualities. His acute and sensitive perceptions of sound, sight, color and romantic possibility did not in the least satisfy his heavy logical demands. Of art for art's sake he had the poorest opinion. He was of dual nature, and where the philosopher, the metaphysician, and the divine preponderated in him, they completely overweighted the exquisite, ethereal imagination, which was so infinitely more precious, had he known it. And although in this golden year of his life, this annus mirabilis of his sojourn at Nether Stowey, he was still allured to the marvellous, the strange, and the supernatural, he sought to disguise his surrender to these fantasies, by clothing his desires in the garb of a severe philosophy of poetry. He decided, in concert with Wordsworth, that it would be well for him to undertake a series of poems in which, as he put it, the incident and agents were to be, in part at least, supernatural, and the excellence arrived at was to consist in the interesting of the affections by the dramatic truth of such emotions as would naturally accompany such situations, supposing them real. And real in this sense they have been to every human being who, from whatever source of delusion, has at any time believed himself under supernatural agency. A cold and unproductive soil this, one would suppose, in which to grow the glowing flowers of Christabel, where night itself, peopled with occult alarms, cannot minimize the mingled horror and splendor of Geraldine's first appearance. Is the night chilly and dark? The night is chilly, but not dark. The thin grey cloud is spread on high. It covers but not hides the sky. The moon is behind, and at the full. And yet she looks both small and dull. The night is chill, the cloud is grey. 'Tis a month before the month of May. And the spring comes slowly up this way. The lovely lady, Christabel, whom her father loves so well, What makes her in the wood so late? A furlong from the castle gate? She had dreams all yesternight of her own betrothed knight, and she in the midnight wood will pray for the weal of her lover that's far away. She stole along, she nothing spoke. The sighs she heaved were soft and low, and naught was green upon the oak, but moss and rarest mistletoe. She kneels beneath a huge oak tree, and in silence prith she. The lady sprang up suddenly. The lovely lady, Christabel. It moaned as near can be. But what it is, she cannot tell. On the other side it seems to be of the huge, broad-breasted, old oak tree. There she sees a damsel bright, dressed in a silken robe of white, that shadowy in the moonlight shone. The neck that made that white robe wan. Her stately neck, and arms were bare. Her blue-veined feet unsandaled were, and wildly glittered here and there the gems entangled in her hair. I guess, 'twas frightful there to see a lady so richly clad as she, beautiful exceedingly. And a chilly basis, these solemnly propounded theories, for the gorgeous fabric of the ancient mariner. Originally founded, as regards its main outlines, upon a dream which occurred to Cruikshank, a dream of a skeleton ship with figures in it. Who could have anticipated such results as that unforgettable scene where the ancient mariner beholdeth a sign in the element afar off? The western wave was all aflame. The day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad bright sun, when that strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the Sunday, and straight the sun was flecked with bars. Heaven's mother send us grace! As if through a dungeon grate he peered, with broad and burning face. Alas! thought I, and my heart beat loud. How fast she nears and nears! Are those her sails that glance in the sun, like restless gossameres? Are those her ribs through which the sun did peer, as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that a death? And are there two? Is death that woman's mate? Her lips were red, her looks were free. Her locks were yellow as gold. Her skin was as white as leprosy. The nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. The naked hulk alongside came, and the twain were casting dice. The game is done. I've won. I've won, quoth she, and whistles thrice. The sun's rim dips, the stars rush out. At one stride comes the dark, with far-heard whisper, o'er the sea. Off shot the spectre bark. We listened, and looked sideways up. Fear at my heart, as at a cup, my life blood seemed to sip. The stars were dim, and thick the night. The steersman's face by his lamp gleamed white. From the sails the dew did drip, till clomb above the eastern bar the horned moon, with one bright star within the nether tip. Or who could have supposed that Wordsworth's subsequent suggestion for the plot of the poem, suppose you represent the mariner as having killed an albatross on entering the South Sea, and that the tutelary spirits of these regions take upon themselves to avenge the crime, should develop into that magnificent defense of the animal right to live, which, in Coleridge's opinion, obtruded a moral sentiment too openly in a work of such pure imagination. The curse of remorse, throughout the whole story, hangs as heavy on the seaman's soul as does the dead weight of the albatross around his neck, until that mystical moment when he blesses the beauty of the happy living things in the water, God's creatures of the great calm. The moving moon went up the sky, and nowhere did abide. Softly she was going up, and a star or two beside her beams bemocked the sultry main, like April hoarfrost spread. But where the ship's huge shadow lay, the charmed water burnt alway, a still and awful red. Beyond the shadow of the ship, I watched the water snakes. They moved in tracks of shining white, and when they reared, the elfish light fell off in hoary flakes. Within the shadow of the ship, I watched their rich attire, blue, glossy green, and velvet black. They coiled and swam, and every track was a flash of golden fire. Oh happy living things! No tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. The self-same moment I could pray, and from my neck so free, the albatross fell off, and sank, like lead into the sea. The mariner receives comfort in prayer. The mariner receives comfort in prayer. The self-same moment I could pray, and from my neck so free, the albatross fell off, and sank, like lead into the sea. They, ancient mariner. Side by side the three friends wandered over the may-sweet hillsides, dipping into wooded combs, musical with the sound of streams climbing the heathery slopes, resting here and there upon some glorious crest to drink in all the joy and colour of the landscape, and to reflect, in Coleridge's own words, how flowers are lovely, love is flower-like. Friendship is a sheltering tree. Each of them young, each of them passionate lovers of nature, each brimming with hopes, and equipped with commanding intellect, they formed the threefold chord, with its tonic, dominant and mediant, of which is born all music. It was nearly 8 o'clock when Coleridge parted from the Wordsworths at the gate of Alfoxden. They were happily tired after some 9 hours rambling, and a serene joy lit up their faces, as of those who have passed through some enchanting experience, who have touched at some oasis of sheer delight. Coleridge tried to frame his thoughts into words, as he strode homeward with his loose shambling gait, continually shifting from one side of the path to the other after his notorious corkscrew habit. The notes of the nightingale, poignantly sweet, echoed to him out of the woods, and he would gladly have lingered to listen, but, instead, he thought, "Farewell, O warbler! Till tomorrow eve! And you, my friends! Farewell, a short farewell! We have been loitering long and pleasantly, and now for our dear homes that strain again. Full fain it would delay me, my dear babe, who, capable of no articulate sound, mars all things with his imitative lisp. How he would place his hand beside his ear, his little hand, the small forefinger up, and bid us listen. And I deem it wise to make him nature's playmate. He knows well the evening star, and once, when he awoke, in most distressful mood, some inward pain had made up that strange thing, an infant's dream. I hurried with him to our orchard plot, and he beheld the moon, and, hushed at once, suspends his sobs, and laughs most silently, while his fair eyes, that swam with undropped tears, did glitter in the yellow moonbeam. Well, it is a father's tale. But if that heaven should give me life, his childhood shall grow up familiar with these songs, that with the night he may associate joy. Once more farewell, sweet nightingale! Once more, my friends! Farewell!" Sarah met him in the road with a despondent air. "Lloyd has gone," said she. "Gone? What, actually gone? Do you mean to say he has left us?" exclaimed Coleridge, horror-struck. "He packed up his things and took leave of me," she replied. "It seems he hired a conveyance from Bristol to fetch him home." "Good heavens!" cried her husband, and all the tranquil joy died out of his face. Nothing but weariness, flabbiness, and dejection remained. "Did he give no reason?" "Oh, he said things about the Wordsworths," replied Sarah. "He thinks you have neglected him shamefully." "So do I." And she shut her mouth with a snap. Coleridge, though so prolific a conversationalist, and so prone to speech, knew when there was a time to be silent. He attempted no defense or excuse. He simply went indoors, and sitting distastefully to an unprepossessing supper, let Sarah say her say upon the subject of Lloyd. It was an extensive and a justifiable recrimination. Then, still in the same abstracted and monosyllabic state, he helped to wash up, attended better late than never to the pigs and fowls, and sat before the fire, with a notebook in his hands and baby clothes pinned to warm upon his knees, while Sarah put the child to bed. He was working out with patient care those apparently unpremeditated effects which go to make up the haunting melody of Christabel. For, skillful and accomplished metrist as he was, it was only by dint of repeated experiments and intense mental effort that he achieved those results in which his art appears most artless. However, he was in no fit state, overtired and distressed as he felt, for laborious efforts of this kind, and presently nature took vengeance upon him in the form of intolerable toothache. A little while he bore it, then, moving tiptoe lest he should be heard in the upper room where Sarah was soothing the little one to sleep, he stole to a corner cupboard and took out a bottle of laudanum. In this false friend and insidious comforter he had already found relief and repose from mental, as from physical troubles. More and more frequently he had recourse to it. He knew its fatal tendency to undermine the will and debilitate the constitution, yet he could not deny himself an artificial peace which he described as a spot of enchantment, a green spot of fountains and trees in the very heart of a waste of sand. And immediately he began to view things couleur de rose. The sharp tongue and angry face of Sarah became transmogrified into the gentle semblance of her anagram, the imaginary ashra of his poems. To be beloved is all I need. And whom I love indeed. O ever be thou blessed. For dearly, ashra, love I thee. This brooding warmth across my breast. This depth of tranquil bliss me. Fount, tree, and shed are gone, I know not whither. But in one quiet room we three are still together. The shadows dance upon the wall. By the still dancing fire flames made. And now they slumber moveless all. And now they melt to one deep shade. But not from me